Hi, I'm Reggie Turner. I'm here with Jim Miller and Terrence Moore. The FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. Gentlemen, it's good to be back together again.
It is indeed.
Well, we've had a few topics in our headlines since we last, so let's kind of catch up on the news a little bit, shall we? First and foremost, gentlemen, we have several Maryland Democrats that are coming out. Some are still exploring, and some have announced that they're going to be running to replace Senator Ben Cardin. That has decided that in 2024 he will not be seeking re-election of his seat. At this point, now this article is from early in the month, but we know that we have Will Jawando that is announced, the Montgomery County council member. We have Congressman David Trone that has announced that he would run. And we have Prince George County's County Executive Angela Alsobrooks that has announced at this stage. Now, some of the other names that were thrown into this mix were Maryland Representative Jamie Raskin has been one that's been talked about for a few years now, and Baltimore County Executive Johnny Owiski I have there. Now, Johnny has announced that he is not running as of the airing of this show, and that he is throwing his support behind Angela Alsobrooks.
Interesting.
So that has been announced within the last 24 hours. But again, anyone that has watched this show know that we've been talking about this in a while, because the talk has been out there that Senator Cardin was not going to run for re-election. We knew that Trone had been coveting this position and wanted it. Now we're starting to see some of the other names coming into the circle. Jim, what say you about this?
Well, I frankly think it's David Trone's to lose. I think there's a couple of interesting. First of all, let me welcome you to election season 2020. First and foremost,
we're a little late.
We are here. Yeah, we're a little late to the party, but better late than never, right?
That's it.
So I think there's a couple of interesting things going on here. Number one, since David Trone is definitely moving towards this, that opens an interesting position in the 6th District congressional race. And we know our local person, Neil Parrott, was neck and neck in that race in the previous. So,
right.
There's an opportunity there for him. I think that Will Jawando, with all due respect, has a lot of work to do to get anywhere close to where David Trone is. I think, in my view, the next logical person in terms of name recognition is probably Jamie Raskin. The Baltimore County Executive, Johnny Owiski, I find it interesting that he is putting his support behind Angela Alsobrooks, because I think she too, at least from my perspective, would be a distant third or fourth in terms of the potential candidates. Also, it's important to note that one of the first questions for our former Maryland Governor Larry Hogan was whether he would consider running for that seat, and he told The Hill on News Nation that it was just not something he ever aspired to do.
I'm going to have to differ with you.
Okay.
I think Trone had to work pretty hard to win his seat. Here. And to win his seat, he had to get to this point. And we knew he was kind of just getting through that last election so he can get to this point. We've talked about it in a prior cycle. So I don't believe it's as easy victory for him or path forward, especially with him nearly coming head to head with Neil Parrott in the last election as well. Also, what he's running on. He's running on prison reform and opioids. I'm sorry, but those are major issues, and he's been in position to make change, and we still haven't seen it. You look at his commercials. His commercial says, "I have a podium, and if we continue to talk about it, things will change." That's not how you make change, just talking about it. It takes action. And I think he's also been quoted saying that he's going to throw up to $50 million, possibly if he could, into this election, using his money. He's also disconnected because of his wealth. I think he really doesn't connect to the people. And I think he's going to struggle in this election. I believe Ms. Ossobrook is going to be the front runner and probably his strongest competition. And I say that because she was instrumental down in Prince George County of getting now Governor Moore elected. She has a lot of influence in that region, in a very populated region, and a well-known name. It may not resonate as far out as in Western Maryland, but down in Prince George County, Montgomery County, and some of the wealthier areas around the state of Maryland, where I think a lot of dollars are going to have to come from backers in this election, especially when you hear about someone like a David Trone who doesn't shy away investing in himself in an election. I think she's going to actually be his strongest competition, and I believe she can beat him unless some things change between now and then.
I mean, there are a lot of prominent Democrats from that part of the state that are endorsing her already, and there's a lot of high-profile names that very well may endorse her. The one thing I'll ask for you, Jim, we made a lot of fun in regards to Trone's commercials.
We did.
During the election season. So the question becomes, think about those commercials that he was running. Do you think that message will resonate in Montgomery and Prince George's County?
Oh, it absolutely won't. No,
so we're going to have to throw the farm ads out. We're going to have to throw the farm ads out.
I
right?
suspect he can make that change. And
well, I mean, obviously he has the money to,
Yeah.
to put together any type of production
And so
he chooses
since
to.
we as Americans all have very short memories relative to politics, I don't think those farm ads are going to hurt him.
I was being funny in regards to that. However, it's going to be interesting to see how he crafts his message, because his message and his record, there's a pretty large divergence between his message and his record. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays. And then prominent Democrats in Annapolis, where is their support going to go? That's really going to be interesting to see where that goes. I look at, larger groups such as the Black Caucus and its prominent members. Where will their support go? Because again, when you start looking at the distribution of numbers in regards to those, the further you come west, you're going to have less and less of those compared to the centralized areas like Montgomery County and Prince George's County. And I'm hard pressed to see Trone, no matter how much money he throws at it, I'm hard pressed to see him winning Prince George's County.
Okay.
And, I think he sees it. You look at the ad, the marketing in his ad was exactly that. He's talking about having a podium, about having a voice, not call to action. He knows he's going to be targeted for some of these major things that he's been talking about in his campaign. And he's off the heels of a campaign, just a few months ago as well. So as short term our memory may be, the internet keeps everything. Right, and when you start getting to that point in campaigning, I think there's going to be some opportunities to really pull some of that stuff out, and he's going to be targeted. And when you have a podium, you become a greater target because you have a record when you stand behind that podium. And I think that's going to, I know it's not fair all the time to be in the position to be questioned when other people haven't had the opportunity to even try, but it's the way politics are. He's going to be held up against his record, and his record is going to be called into question throughout this campaign.
Now, the one question I have, Jim, and I'm not sure if you know the answer to this, but if he runs for that seat, he doesn't have to vacate his current seat.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that.
Because, I guess from the Democratic Party, you're looking at it like it's a risk for him to run, right? Because
no, because he would have to run again for Congress, right?
What I'm saying is if you would have to vacate the seat, it would be a risk.
Right.
Yes.
because it's a risk that a Republican will win that seat out here based on the sentiment of the electorate here and how close Parrott came
Correct.
in that election. So that'll be interesting for us to.
Well, since he's
figure out.
announced already, he would have had to vacate when he announced. He can't be campaigning in that seat if he had to vacate
True,
it.
yeah.
So
Well,
he's-
that's true.
So he's
Yeah.
still in the seat.
Yeah. But even with him winning, right, you open up something out here. You open up an opportunity for the Republicans to grab another spot.
Right. You do. And a very good opportunity because Neil Parrott has gained a lot of name recognition.
Yeah.
And if you take a loss shooting for the stars, when it's time for you to go up for re-election yourself, does that hurt you?
Right. Do people basically say you didn't want to represent us in this way? You wanted to move on, and it shows in your record, and who knows where that'll move.
It's a risk no matter what.
It's a risk no matter what. But it's his calculated risk because we've known about this for at least 2 years that this was his goal and what he wanted to do.
You know, I still, and I don't want to bet any more dinners because I've bought you guys enough dinners over the years with wrong political
Stick with Cronkite, Jay. Stick
suggestions
with
that I've made.
Cronkite.
But I really think that the name recognition, regardless of whether there was assistance by also Brooks to get the current governor elected, I really think the name recognition is going to trump that.
But I think if you pay
No pun
attention to
intended.
publications downstate, you'll get that's not a name that's known in our community.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But what I'm saying is, in the majority population area, she is very well known.
Okay.
And I think our attachment to Trone is a little stronger here than it is down in that
down
area
there,
as well.
right? Absolutely. So it'll be an interesting race, and obviously we haven't seen all the names jump into it because obviously if Jamie Raskins jumps in, that's another one with name recognition that could move the needle and split votes in different ways and may split some allegiances in regards to who's going to support who. So it'll be interesting to see
Yep.
how that plays.
Yep.
Gentlemen, next topic. We have the latest presidential polls out.
Yeah.
Obviously, on the Democratic side, you have Biden, and on the Republican side, you have Trump running away with things for the most part. Jim, what say you?
Yeah, so that is a scary thought process for me. I think that the fact that in most all of these polls, whether you're talking about the ABC, the Washington Post poll, the Noble Predictive Insights, Vanderbilt University, Economist /YouGov, CBS News, Nevada Independent. I mean, Trump is up anywhere from 20 to 40 points.
Yeah,
over
the Emerson
Biden.
poll, he's up, looks like that's the biggest, where he's up 46 points.
So, yeah, that's interesting. I don't think it says anything about Trump. I think it says a lot about President Biden, personally.
I think it says something about where we are as an electorate, that we consider these to be our best two candidates.
Yeah.
I think that's what that says. Terrence, what say you?
I think polls are stupid. I'm sorry. I know. I think we do this. I think polls influence elections. I don't think it really does the data into the electorate. I'm sorry. The people that they're polling, how they're polling, it really is not a fair representation of the country. I'm sorry.
But it
never
gives us
is.
something to talk about on the flip side.
It does.
Absolutely. It does. I'm sorry. And I know that's
And
a real
saving
crass
and
way.
accepting one or maybe two election cycles in our recent history, polls have been reasonably accurate.
No, but here's where polls are important. Polls do show a measured support, and it shows the trends of where that support is going, and it often dictates where the money is going to flow. Again, why did Hogan not run? Because the poll said he didn't have a snowball's chance. to win. That was his reason. And obviously he wasn't going to get the donor support that was needed to do so because they didn't feel the confidence was there in the electorate.
I'm sorry. Polls are manipulation. We are a country that don't do the due diligence to understand the laws, the track record, or the candidates. So we listen to media. Media is dictated by the polls. So the poll tells the media what to report on, and the people listen to the media, and then they go out and vote that way. I'm sorry.
I'm not going to argue with your point because, listen, my beloved Commanders, Redskins, because my mama called them the Redskins, they're projected to be in the bottom half of the NFL this year. That is totally ridiculous. I don't buy into that. So I understand your concern about polls and their manipulative tactics. I'm with you there.
It's a chicken and the egg situation with polls. Again, I'm big on data. I like the data. I understand it. But I think we put too much stock in it. And because we put so much stock in it, people start to follow the data, even though the data is incomplete and it's a forecast. It's a prediction. Right, that's like going to see a psychic and then living your life to whatever that psychic told you was going to happen. You make that happen because that's what you're kind of gravitating towards. And I just don't believe that these polls are representative. And if this is true, it is scary. It is scary considering what both Trump and Biden are in the news for right now. What's happening in our borders right now. All right. What's happening in court cases and civil suits that are happening right now. It's scary that this is the best options we have for moving our country forward.
Well, we've got Nikki Haley announcing.
I don't know.
And we've got Ron DeSantis,
Oh,
who everybody says is finished. Is Nikki Haley an option? I mean, realistically, when is the last time we've run a candidate against an incumbent? Is it, Biden is going to run? Is there going to be somebody running against him or multiple people?
Well, I mean, there's some lesser known folks that have thrown their name in the hat on the Democratic side. But really, and Terrence, I agree with you in regards to what you're saying, the polls. Things don't really start to shake themselves out until you can start seeing folks on stage together and hearing debates and how things move. But the problem is many won't have the money to survive to get there.
But what does it say when you have Democrats challenging the elected president? What is that message? What is that message to the independent voter that is thinking about, I don't really want to vote for Trump, but I don't really want to vote for Biden?
I think that's healthy.
That's the way it should be.
Okay.
That's what the problem with the party system is.
Right, because we have too much groupthink. Because you have people that are supporting Trump out of fear. Not out of principle, but out of fear.
And you don't have that on the other side?
You have it on both sides. But the point is, when someone steps up and runs against an incumbent, that's a good thing.
Okay.
Yeah, like his beloved Commanders. They don't have a quarterback. They got 6 quarterbacks, but they don't have a quarterback, right? So the fan base is divided, right? They shouldn't all jump behind one no good quarterback. They should put their stock in several ones so the competition can happen on the field, and ultimately they can lose gracefully.
Let's move on before we have an HR issue.
Cronkite is becoming Howard Cosell.
All right, last topic of this round, gentlemen. Obviously, we're talking about how well Trump's doing, and it's kind of go time, right, for DeSantis, right? He's been on his book tour. He's running around. He's talking. He's fighting with Disney. Where are we, Jim?
Too early to tell. I know that people were suggesting, the article that I read suggests that, there's a tough road ahead for DeSantis. But again, we have short memories.
But I think DeSantis will have access to money that he can hang around.
Oh, I think he can
and
too.
See how many shoes drop with all the things that are dragging Trump down.
He has too many enemies. Too many enemies. He's poked too many bears, and he's running through the woods, and he sooner or later he's going to trip and fall and be destroyed. Trump has said, if you run, I'm bloodying you up, no matter what. And you got to take attacks from Trump. You're going to have to take a tax from Democrats. And at the same time, you have Disney, the most powerful media conglomerate, saying, we're coming after you as well. I just don't think, I think he's going to make some noise. He's going to boast his profile publicly for another book tour maybe. But as far as running and being a strong enough candidate, no, he's just going to be noise. And he's going to be more destructive to the process, which is saying a lot. But
what you're saying is that it's Trump in a runaway and there's no one out there to challenge him. Do you buy that, Jim?
Well, there's Nikki. Bring back Jeb Bush.
Is there anything that you want to, anything you want to put on Nikki?
I don't know. No. Okay, I don't know who else is going to materialize from the Republican side of the
This
the
can't be it, though, for us, right?
I can't imagine it will be. No.
I'm telling you, former Governor Hogan, I'm saying it right now. I know he said he wasn't. He's
you
not
talked about
do
the strategy of waiting and waiting and waiting.
Wait it out. If you follow him on Twitter, he is building a campaign quietly. He's touching on every issue that comes out from a national level, and he's building up support right now behind the scenes.
And you're seeing him every Sunday on national television.
Yep. And he's in a position now where he can attack both sides and don't have no reason for them to attack him back.
And still hugely popular. Because how could you say you were interested in being president, but you're not interested in being a senator?
I just, maybe, I'm not sure, maybe advice for another, I'm not sure what comes of it, but I just don't see much in the pool right now that's going to come up. And he's also one that has been consistent in his message against Trump. So it's not someone who's going to come out and all of a sudden go into defensive or offensive and attack Trump and those people who follow him. I'm just saying, he has the tools and the resources to make it happen. Is he going to do it? I don't know.
Gentlemen, I would just say we're a year and a half before our next election, and this is what we have.
I understand.
That's kind of depressing, right?
Well, but, let's face it. I mean, the campaign season only opened today because we announced today.
Very true. So you're saying we should start seeing some movement now that we've opened campaign 2024.
Right. Exactly.
I think that's the problem. I believe we campaign for too long, and I think it feels like it never ends.
Well, it doesn't.
So it really doesn't have a start and an end. And here we go again for next year or so, and going to go through this and ebbs and flows and everything that we're going to go through, and it's just going to drag us and make us more and more divided for the next year and a half to ultimately try to solve things that need us to be united. It's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Well, go Commanders. That's where we'll leave that. All right, gentlemen, let's take a break and we'll come back and cover some more topics. So stay with us. We'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. Gentlemen, let's talk a little bit about Washington County. Jim, you've provided for us a deep dive into our county's budget. I know that there was a hearing last week in regards to citizens were able to kind of come give their comment in support of the things that they felt that were critical. Looks like our budget is just shy of $400 million for fiscal 2024. Jim, what say you?
So when you say, that's true. I mean, it's about overall, I think about an 8% increase. Is that true? Mm-hmm. There's plenty of things to talk about. Interestingly, I think the things that caught my attention were an $18 million increase in the general fund, mm-hmm. which is about a 6.94%. Water fund increase of 45%. Airport fund increase of 42%, 41.92%. Mm-hmm. And those are some significant increases, plus 15.77% increase in utility administration. That's fairly significant. Yeah, a lot going on.
You know, the other thing I kind of look down when I look at restricted funds, you're seeing a decrease in the gaming commission. And the reason that comes to mind is that affects the nonprofit community, because that means that's going to be less dollars that are going to be allocated through the gaming commission funds.
That's true. That's very true. And interestingly, and I was privy to, I mean, if you look at what some of the funding decisions we make there, there's some interesting requests that came through in prior years. I don't know what they look like this year. I don't know what, I think we're coming up on that season again, aren't we?
I believe so.
For the gaming?
Yes.
Yes, that actually ended
Actually,
a week ago.
the gaming commission grants were due 2 weeks ago.
Right.
2 weeks ago, gaming commission grants were due, and then the interview process with the nonprofits that apply for funds will be in mid-June,
Correct.
and then the decisions for the gaming allocation will come out in August. So that's normally the timing there. You know, looking at revenues and how things are moving, it looks like property taxes are still projected to increase about $8.5 million from fiscal 23 to fiscal 24. Local tax is going up. Interest income is increasing.
Well, that's obvious because of the change in the interest rates.
Right.
And property tax, quite frankly, is due to increased property values.
Yes.
Yep. Average price of in 2020 was $225,000. In 2023 is $300,000.
Yeah.
Which unfortunately also speaks to some of the housing issues that we have right now with the inflated cost of housing actually rising. And if you look at the active inventory of houses, you see that it's down substantially from almost by what, half?
Yeah.
If you look at the numbers, a little over half, and it's been staying steady there since 2021. So no new inventory is coming on the market.
You know, another thing, I think the hot button issue that I've heard, and just from looking at a little bit of the testimony at the budget hearing, is education, the funding of education. I believe that's shy about $7 or $8 million in regards to the proposed budget.
When you said shy, you mean that we're underfunding based on what was asked.
Right. Now,
Yes.
But education still represents 44%
it represents a large percentage
of the
budget.
total general.
So as someone who has not dug into the education budget, and as someone who has not spoke to someone that is more intimately involved in understanding, let me just kind of give you a few things I see. And Terrence, I'm going to come to you with this. I always see Democrats saying you need to fully fund the budget. You need to fully fund the education budget. I struggle with that as a financial advisor when you're always saying you have to fully fund something when there's not a great articulation of what fully funding it will do and what's the return on investment for fully funding it. And if those dollars have been used effectively in the past, and will they? How do you see that?
I agree. I think that's with anything in the budget, right? We talk about in general. If we don't have the kind of the nuts and bolts of where those dollars are spent, it's hard to really determine the benefit and the waste, right? Because waste, it exists no matter what. And that's not a negative thing. It happens no matter what you do. Any kind of budget, there is going to be some kind of loss or waste that actually gets built into it as well. And I think it's hard to people to rally behind it sometimes because we throw the big name, the overarching title category of saying something like education and what it needs to fund, and not really understanding what those things are. And we spoke about that a few weeks ago when they spoke about the additional $8 million ask that was coming in from the educational budget, and we wanted to know really what is it for? How is it going to be used? How much money do you have? What's the but that goes to our school board as well. right? Those are some of the things that it has to be articulated. I know right before the county meeting that superintendent had been kind of reaching out in support of community members to show up to speak to the benefits, but it also took explaining what that money was going to. And when you start speaking that the dollars are really around mental health and what's happening in our schools post-COVID as well, and some of those uses, the increase of English learners that are coming into the school system as well, that we need qualified professionals, the loss and retention efforts around our school teachers and what we have to do around pay. And it's not really big about salary. It's about giving them the tools and resources to be effective in their classrooms. So when you start hearing a little bit more where those dollars are really allocated to or attached to, then that number seems small, especially when you talk about the number of kids in our school system and how it's been only rising over the last few years.
Well, and again, this is not just the Washington County Public Schools.
Absolutely.
This is Hagerstown Community College as well. And one of the other things that we know about our community college is it has generally seen an increase in student population in economically challenging times. And Terrence, what's your favorite saying these days? Winter is coming?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think they're probably preparing for an increase in need as well.
Well, the thing is that, looking at the numbers again, I can see on the face of it why many people would be very sensitive to the education numbers because the numbers are showing basically it being flat. So there's really no increase in that budget. I mean, the increase
except for level of effort.
Right. I mean, the increase is about $297,000. Now, we've talked a lot on the show about the effects of COVID, the behavioral issues in schools, all of those things, some of the lack of resources around that, helping students and things of that nature. And looking at this, it's like, well, wow, with all those challenges we've been coming through, and you're basically leaving the education budget flat. And again, I haven't been close enough to the process to hear from someone on the side of looking for more out of this budget to hear it being articulated of what they see another $7 to $8 million will do.
This is, and you're absolutely right, but on the other side of that, the question is how do you pay for it?
Yes.
And we have a very conservative group in our county commissioners at this point. Not that we don't usually have a very conservative group, but they don't want to raise taxes.
And I would say we talk about schools like Hagerstown Community College versus our public school system. So I don't want to exclude them, but they also have means to get to garnering more funds. They also have more controls over their dollars and their marketing budget and some of the ills of the school system that they really don't have to compete with. And this new blueprint model has been really built to also support them long term as well, as we're putting our kids into the college system a lot sooner than we normally would, and giving them a path directly into college a little bit as well. But the public school system is still probably one of, I know the word socialism, really, raises hairs, but it's a socialist system that we occupy that everyone has access to. And the dollars have to be spread evenly across the board, and it's hard to manage that and really help all at the same time and really be dependent on funding in this manner to actually help the public school system. So I'm not sure. Again, I don't know exactly how you drive those dollars in more or how you make a stronger case to get those dollars in, but I'm sure we all want to see a stronger educational system. We all benefit from a stronger educational system, as we spoke about, but it's hard to make that pitch, and there's still parts of our population that don't have children in the school system anymore, or never had children in the school system, who still pay tax dollars that go into our school system. So it's probably the most difficult body to really garner additional funds for and people to see the benefit. We thought during COVID, when all the parents were pulling their hair out and going, oh my goodness, I want my kids back in school, and they seen the benefit of what school did and what it was the impact when individuals didn't have child care when they were returning back to work, or they seen the gaps in education that were happening with their children, that we thought we was going to come out of this and people were going to rally behind the school system. As Jim said, short-term memory.
Right. So in looking at these numbers, let me give you guys something else to chew on. So from a pure dollars perspective in the budget, The largest increase is going towards public safety, with about $8 million increase being proposed in public safety. But from a percentage standpoint, the largest increase is towards community programs and services, which is estimated to increase about 29%. First and foremost, Jim, speak to public safety and that increase.
Well, I think that's a continuing critical issue, and I can't speak with authority to what that increase is going towards, but we know those costs are rising. We know that literally there's a new sheriff in town, so I'm sure that he brings initiatives that he'd like to see, which we hope will benefit our citizenry. So that doesn't surprise me, bottom line.
Yeah.
And I'll just jump on that as well. Last week we had an event up in Frostburg with law enforcement over hate bias, and we just talked about some of the challenges across the state about reporting hate bias, and both Chief Kiefer as well as Sheriff Albert was there present to really speak about the efforts of their organizations and how they're addressing things in the community. And they rattled off numbers of trainings and programs that they have to go through. On top of that, one of the biggest things coming down from the Attorney General is a number of standards and trainings that have to come down to every city, county. So there's a burden of training. There's a huge benefit of it, but there's also a burden of training on law enforcement where they still need to be out there in the streets serving and protecting, but they also have to be off the streets training and being in the best prepared to serve and protect. And finding that balance means dollars have to come in and recruitment has to go up to get more officers on the street so those could be in those rooms getting trained properly.
The other thing I'm looking at, and Terrence, I want you to put your HR hat on for me on this one. So in looking at the general fund expenditures, from a percentage basis, the largest increase is going to go towards overtime. Does that say to you, since you're seeing a larger jump in overtime, that you have a lot of unfilled positions where you're needing to pay overtime to kind of cover that? Does that not say anything at all to you?
That goes to what we're seeing across the country, right? There was right now, it's on average 2 open jobs for every 1 person on unemployment right now. They're still struggling getting people into the office and working. On top of that, qualified people to work in these positions as well. So as an organization, you have to start making decisions. Do you increase salaries knowing that it's not sustainable to get people into these positions that aren't qualified? And the largest cost of is onboarding and training an individual, because you don't start seeing a return on that investment for months and years, depending on how complex that job is as well. So is it more beneficial to pay overtime to the individuals that know the work and can do twice as much of it in that time that you're paying for? You got to start running those numbers. And in some organizations, it's better to pay overtime than to spend the money recruiting and bringing people in. But you also have to worry about balance of burnout as well, and putting that burden on others.
Yes.
Well, and the reality is that my guess is that the county runs that much like many other organizations, and they look at overtimes on a position basis, and if that could be a key to opening up a new position, even if it doesn't exist today. We may have positions that were created as a result of, we're seeing that Susie Smith, who does X, had an average of 15 hours of overtime a week for 6 months. Right. So maybe we need to look at combining something together to create another position that's similar to Susie Smith's.
Or there's certain jobs that have ebbs and flows of capacity.
Absolutely.
Right? So why pay somebody to be in a job when they're going to be capacitized 50% of the time, right? Or seasonal, or there's just a certain time of the year when that work gets overloaded. When I could just pay staff to be overtime and pay less than that FTE and don't have to pay the additional benefits as well.
Well, and we also have to assume, and I know this is the case in my business, that because of COVID and because of all of the paradigm shifts that we've experienced over the last 4 years, business has changed. And positions have changed, and how we do things, and where we do things, and why we do things have changed. So it's not just it's not just the normal ebb and flow. It's wholesale changes in the way we do business today versus 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah. And just to be clear, on a percentage basis, overtime is the largest increase. However, on a dollars basis, the largest increase is just general operating expenses, fringe benefits, and full-time employment. Those are the largest expenses. So for instance, the operating costs, they're projecting an increase of about 6.9 million. In regards to full-time employees, they're looking at about 5.7 million, and fringe benefits are looking at 4.9 million. That's the majority of where the dollars are going for and the increases they're showing towards the general fund. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I grabbed out of here is, gentlemen, on page 12, just looking at some of the capital improvement expenditures that they have out there. I see a pretty large investment at the airport that is budgeted in. I see some bridge work, drainage, Board of Education.
Terminal expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of things going on.
You have some things with HCC that are happening there towards the Bowman project. You see ACT renovation. So anything grab you in regards to those things on the capital improvements?
We talked about some of those previously. I didn't see anything in the breakout that was significantly of interest.
And remember, this list is different from the ARPA money that's going to be going towards capital improvements as well. This is separate from that. There was nothing that really grabbed me in regards to this. So based on where we are, Jim, are you familiar with where the process goes from here? So you had your hearing. Is there another hearing, or is it just that one hearing?
I am not familiar.
That
I'm not familiar. We need one of our county commissioners
that's what I was
to
about
come
to
in
say.
and talk.
We got to get our county commissioners on to come have a conversation about that.
Indeed.
All right. Well, good stuff, gentlemen. Well, the one thing is, from a financial advisory standpoint, the county does have a very good credit rating.
Yes, they do.
It is AA+, which it was upgraded to in 2014 by Standard & Poor's. So hopefully we are being diligent and preserving our credit rating through the winter.
And I'm about to say that that credit rating is going to be very important for counties when winter comes. And also, if you're listening to the news, the clawback that is inevitable, as well as we get ready for a possibility of the country going into debt further and defaulting on our debt. One of the things they said in negotiating right now is how do they do a clawback of a lot of those dollars from that ARPA money during COVID, and that may hit and impact a lot of cities and counties across the country.
All right, gentlemen, let's hold and take a break here. We got some more topics around the state of Maryland to cover, so stay with us, and we'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. Gentlemen, we have spent a lot of time today on a few topics, so we're going to have to jump right into Fast Five. You guys have been long-winded again.
It's all Terrence.
Yeah, true. But let's jump right into these topics. This first topic is from the Baltimore Banner. They're all still at large. Clergy abuse survivors call for suspension, release of names after investigative articles. Jim, what say you?
Can't disagree. I think that, not good on any level. And I think transparency is absolutely needed here. I mean, it's just crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's become a bad joke.
There's no joke, though.
No, I know, and that's what I said. You watch it on television, you see it in movies. It's become a running kind of acceptance, of the behavior because it's tied to the clergy, and it shouldn't be. And I think there need to be a standard set, and until.
Well, the standard needs to be zero tolerance.
Absolutely.
And let me couch this for our viewers. There was a 456-page grand jury report that was released last month with details of decades of abuse and cover-ups within the Catholic Church. And the report identified 158 priests, most of them that had already been known within the archdiocese as being accused of sexual abuse and physical torture of more than 600 victims over the past 80 years.
And interestingly, redacted from the report were the names of 5 church officials who handled the allegations of abuse, as well as 10 clergy members who are presumed alive and not widely known to have been accused.
Money and power, right?
Yep.
Yeah, not good.
Hundreds of lives destroyed. And again,
You can multiply that by the families and the family impact. I mean, you're talking
generationally, right?
thousands.
Yes. Yep.
And generational
Well, and how
trauma
many
that-
things have not been reported?
Right.
Agreed.
I mean, this is like the crime of rape. What percentage is not reported?
Well, again, you don't support reporting it when nothing happens and nothing gets done. The victim has to go through investigations and have to go through being questioned, and also at times being accused of lying, and then for nothing to result of that. That's emotional, mental trauma on top of the physical abuse and that happened here. So I think we all can stand behind. I don't think anybody can comfortably say that this stuff should be hidden, because I don't see any benefit to that. The truth is the truth. Unless there's a false allegation, the truth is the truth.
Yep. Gentlemen, the next topic is 12 jobs that will definitely survive the next 20 years. Now, I believe this is a conversation that we need to have with our children, our godchildren, our nephews, our nieces. So let me name them off, and I'm happy to see that my job is on the list because my days of playing basketball are far behind. Even though those paychecks are really nice on that side for everyone but John Morant, but we'll leave that alone. But the 12 jobs that will survive are nurses, electricians, plumbers, marketing managers, construction managers, mental health counselors, data scientists, personal financial advisors, truck drivers, lawyers, computer support specialists, software developers, and that was the last one. Terrence, I know you want to jump all over this one. I'm coming right to you. I can't pass you by.
I'm not surprised. We see the growing acceptance of AI when just 10 years ago we were scared it was going to take over the world. Now everybody's got it on their phone, right? And we're using AI. And we've seen
it's still going to take over the world.
It's still going to take over the world, but we're just going to let it happen, while we scroll on our social media. But, nurses, we've seen during the pandemic, again, not surprised there, and we know
and
there's
the
a shortage
of nurses that we have.
Electricians and plumbers, that's a big apprentice kind of job as well that happens. So when you have a long period of time when you weren't able to have somebody apprentice and take another next generation under your wing, then you can understand that a lot of people are retiring from that work and no one to backfill those positions. Marketing managers, I say it all the time, marketing controls the world. It dictates what we buy, what we believe, and how we behave. So not surprised there. We're always going to need marketing in some degree. Construction, we talk about big infrastructure. Mental health, we talked about that all the time during the pandemic. So we know that's, you talk about building up a client base. We built a client base of the entire world in 2020. Data scientists, again, we use data to make decisions, and personal finance advisors, financial advisors. Again, it's our money. And believe it or not, probably the most critical job on here, outside we talk about our nurses, is truck drivers. Truck drivers if people don't understand, if the truck drivers shortage happens, that sends everything to a halt.
We're done.
We're done.
Well, let's think about in the heart of COVID, when we were struggling to get goods and services, and especially goods in our grocery stores.
Absolutely.
So,
and the rest of the jobs are taking care of the computers. You got to make sure the computers are running, because we've given them majority of our duties and responsibilities. So,
what interested me about this list was that more than half of these theoretically don't need college degrees. They are trade programs or they are specialty enough where you don't need a degree. Even and some are gonna argue with me on this point, but software developers, for example, yes, there are plenty of colleges that offer software development
But you
courses.
can have just certifications to cover
But
that, right?
the majority of software developers that I've hired over the past 24 months have not had college degrees. They've had very specialty training in the specific elements, because it's such a vast, there are so many tools out there are so many flavors of it that the college just can't keep up with this, and especially now that it's moved to cloud. Same thing with computer support specialists. Yeah, there's some basic things you can get at a college, and that is certainly beneficial, but you don't need a college degree to be computer support.
So would you say lawyers is the only one that requires a college degree out of this list?
Well, no, I wouldn't say that. I would say, going down the list, nurses absolutely requires. Electricians is going to be specialty. That's going to be a trade. Plumbers, trades. Marketing managers, I could go either way on that.
Yes.
Construction managers, I could probably go either way on that, but I don't think it's a necessary thing.
Right.
Mental health counselors, there's obviously degree programs that need to happen there. Data scientists, again, I could go both ways on that. Personal financial advisors, specialty, right?
Specialty. It all depends on where and who, but specialty.
Right.
Absolutely.
Truck drivers, obviously no college degree required there. Lawyers, we need a college degree.
So lawyers and nurses are the only two that have the degree requirements out of this
An
list.
absolute degree requirement, I would say yes.
I think there's nursing programs. I don't believe they're all college degree, are they? I think it depends on which level nursing that you get into.
Yeah,
as well.
I think if you're talking about a registered nurse
Right,
or a
right.
registered nurse practitioner, there are probably some entry-level positions
Right.
that don't require college degrees. But even the LPN, which is I think one of the entry levels, I think there's a college program
Right,
around
no,
that.
absolutely. And I know there's some high-level degrees that go into nursing and nurse practitioners and stuff like that as well. But again, there's a path into it, possibly.
There is.
Right.
I think what's interesting also about this list, these are the 12 that are around today that they're saying are going to be moving forward. And you look at this list and you say, wow, only 12. Well, no, not only 12. I mean, these are the ones that they feel they're suggesting or absolutes are going to be around. But think about all of the new types of positions. Think about what AI is going to potentially bring to the table. Think about all of the different positions based on, again, we talked earlier about a paradigm shift as a result of COVID, and we're all doing business differently. Think about all the different opportunities that are going to be available. You know, we grow up and we think, wow, if only I was around when, nobody had electricity, because I could have been the one that invented electricity or the light bulb or whatever the case may be. Those opportunities exist every day, no matter what period you live in my view at least. We just need smart people to figure out what the next big thing is and make hay when the sun shines, so to speak.
Yep, and these are jobs, but these jobs aren't siloed as well, right? To be a lawyer, there's a number of support positions that tie into being a lawyer, right? And positioned in different kind of lawyers as well. So I think these are more industries that we can look at it, in a greater sense in support of this as well as education and certification classes that allow you a pathway into these.
Right.
So I think there are also a ripple effect as outside these specific jobs that also come into play.
We talked when I remember in high school and my first years in college, where we weren't really up on the micro-based computer technology, but I remember hearing many people say about how we were going to eliminate all of these jobs as a result of computers. Never happened. And now people are talking about how AI is going to replace. You'll be able to write a web page, and maybe you will. Well, you can. But that doesn't mean that there's not some ancillary job that's going to take over that has more benefit, more importance, because we get better and we expect more and we're more precise with the things we do as a result of the technology that has been developed by others.
Yeah. Well, gentlemen, we've been long-winded today. Let's cover one more topic. We're making this like fast 3 with how we've gone. But the last one we're going to cover, gentlemen, is the DOJ must provide justice to justices. And basically, there's been some left-wing demonstrators that are targeting the homes of Supreme Court justices. And there are Republicans that are stepping forward saying that the Attorney General needs to do more to enforce the law and protect the justices from intimidation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the case, if it were,
Doesn't matter if they have a D or an R, right?
no, it doesn't.
I mean,
It
the
really doesn't
justices should be protected.
matter. Absolutely.
But one thing we haven't talked about is, some of the information that's coming out in regards to our Justice Clarence Thomas. And, the other side of them needing to be protected is the standard of ethics that our justices have, like the lights being shined on that. And I think that's something we'll need to talk about in future weeks as well. But getting back to this, Terrence, what say you on the justice for justices?
I think we just need to protect our justice system. No one wants anyone making decisions out of fear.
Yes.
And fear of reprisal, and make especially decisions that impact our lives and lives of our loved ones. But there is a balance there as well that goes back to what you said, accountability,
right.
As well. Why is this targeting happening? And it's not just for it to be happening, but there needs to be a balancing of the scales.
Absolutely.
And not with violence.
No.
Right. Sets bad precedent. So it'll be interesting to see, because you would have to imagine as we get closer to election season, these type of things start to ramp up and every issue becomes hypersensitive. So,
Well, and this one is ramped up in large part because of some of the landmark decisions. The overturning of Roe v. Wade is certainly the top among them.
yeah.
And we've seen what happened in Pelosi in her home as well. So it's elected officials as well. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have to protect them.
And we've had some things on a state level where there was a representative or someone downstate
with a baseball bat that
baseball
wasn't
bat.
yes.
Yeah, so we're this political violence is
Not good.
not good. But violence in our community as a whole is not good, right? It's heading the wrong direction. But well, gentlemen, that's it for tonight. So that is all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and send us your comments to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That is feedback@theflipsidetv.com. But most importantly, join us again next week for another episode of The Flip Side.